The
Stay
morning
with me,
sun hit
breathe.
the military base like a slap to the
I know,
face.
hold on, man.
Sergeant Marcus Steele stood in the center of the training
with me.
field, his chest puffed out like a rooster ready for a fight. Around him, 1,040 soldiers gathered in perfect formation, their boots clicking against the ground in unison. The air smelled of sweat, dirt, and something else. Pride. The kind of pride that comes before a fall. Marcus was not just any soldier. He wore his Navy SEAL badge like a crown. 6'2", muscles carved from stone, a jaw so sharp it could cut glass. He had completed missions in places most people could not even pronounce. He had stared death in the face and laughed. Today, he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. The demonstration was supposed to be simple. Show the new recruits some basic self-defense moves. Nothing fancy, nothing dangerous. But Marcus had other plans. He loved an audience. And with over 1,000 pairs of eyes watching him, he was going to put on a show they would never forget. That is when she walked onto the field. Her name was Lieutenant Sarah Chen, 5'5", slim build, dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She did not look like much. That was her secret weapon. People always underestimated her. Marcus was about to join that long list of fools. Sarah had been brought in to teach a class on tactical combat. She was a specialist in hand-to-hand fighting, black belt in 3 different martial arts, combat instructor for the past 8 years, but none of that mattered to Marcus. All he saw was a small woman who probably could not even do 10 push-ups. The crowd murmured when she stepped forward. Some soldiers exchanged glances, others smirked. A woman, teaching them about fighting. This was going to be entertaining for all the wrong reasons. Marcus saw his opportunity. He strutted toward her like a peacock on parade. The crowd went quiet. Everyone could sense what was coming. This was not going to be a lesson. This was going to be a showdown. He stopped right in front of her, so close she had to tilt her head back to look at him. He smiled. The kind of smile that said he had already won. "Remember, I am a Navy SEAL," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. His voice dripped with arrogance. The warning was not for her. It was for the crowd. It was his way of saying that whatever happened next was not his fault. He was giving her a chance to back down, to walk away, to save herself the embarrassment. Sarah did not blink. She did not step back. She just looked at him with those calm brown eyes. Eyes that had seen things most people could not imagine. Eyes that did not show fear. "I understand," she said softly. Her voice was steady. No anger, no nervousness, just ice-cold confidence. The crowd leaned in. Phones came out. This was going to be good. A Navy SEAL versus a tiny woman. Everyone thought they knew how this would end. Marcus raised his fists. Not a proper fighting stance. More like he was posing for a photograph. He bounced on his toes, showing off, making sure everyone could see his muscles flex under his uniform. Sarah stood still, her hands relaxed at her sides. She looked almost bored. That made Marcus angry. He wanted her to be scared, needed her to be scared. How dare she stand there so calm when he was a trained killer? "Come on then," he said, waving her forward. "Show me what you got, sweetheart." That word, sweetheart, it hung in the air like smoke. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some of the female soldiers frowned. They had all been called that word before, always meant to make them feel small, to remind them they did not belong. Sarah took one step forward, just one. Her movements were smooth, controlled, like water flowing downhill. Marcus grinned. He thought she was finally getting into position. He thought she was about to try some fancy move he could easily counter. He thought he had her figured out. He thought wrong. The morning was about to teach Marcus a lesson that no amount of training could prepare him for. Pride is not armor. Size is not strength. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous one. What happened next would be talked about on that base for years to come. It would be recorded on dozens of phones, shared on social media, analyzed frame by frame. But none of those videos would capture the most important part of the story. They would not show the years of training Sarah had endured, the early mornings, the bruised ribs, the broken fingers that healed crooked, the countless hours spent perfecting techniques that most people did not even know existed. They would not show the disrespect she had faced her entire career, the men who refused to salute her, the comments about her looks, the assignments she was passed over for because someone decided a woman could not handle it. They would not show the fire that burned inside her, the determination to prove that skill mattered more than size, that intelligence could beat brute force, that underestimating someone was the fastest way to lose. All of that was about to explode onto the training field in front of 1,040 witnesses. Marcus made the first move. Of course he did. Men like him always had to be first, had to be in control. He lunged forward, throwing a punch that was more about power than precision. It was sloppy, telegraphed, the kind of move that works great in movies but fails in real fights. Sarah saw it coming from a mile away. She shifted her weight slightly, just a few inches to the left. His fist sailed past her face, hitting nothing but air. The crowd gasped. Marcus stumbled forward, caught off balance by his own momentum. Before he could recover, Sarah was already moving. She stepped in close, closer than anyone would expect in a fight, so close she could smell his cologne, that expensive stuff he wore to impress people. Her hand came up, not in a fist, open palm. She struck him in the chest, right at the solar plexus, the spot where all the nerves meet, the spot that, when hit correctly, can drop a grown man in seconds. She hit it correctly. Time seemed to stop. Marcus felt his lungs freeze. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. For a man who had survived combat zones, this moment of pure shock was something new, something terrifying. His knees buckled, not slowly, not dramatically, just straight down like someone had cut the strings on a puppet. He dropped onto the dirt, landing hard on his knees. A cloud of dust puffed up around him. The training field went silent, completely silent. 1,040 soldiers stood frozen, mouths open, eyes wide. Nobody could believe what they had just seen. A Navy SEAL, a legend, a man who had killed terrorists with his bare hands, down on his knees from a single strike by a woman half his size. Marcus gasped for air. His chest heaved, but nothing came in. That strike had knocked the wind out of him completely. His face turned red, then purple. Panic flashed in his eyes. He could not breathe, could not move, could not do anything except kneel there like he was praying. Sarah stood over him. Her expression had not changed, still calm, still controlled. She looked down at him the way a teacher looks at a student who just learned a hard lesson. "Breathe through your nose," she said quietly. "Slow breaths, it will pass." Her voice cut through his panic. He followed her instructions. Nose breathing, shallow at first, then deeper. After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 seconds, air finally rushed back into his lungs. The crowd started to react. Whispers rippled through the formation, then murmurs, then outright talking. Phones were everywhere now, recording, photographing. This moment was being captured from every angle. "Did you see that?" someone whispered. "One hit, just one. He warned her he was a SEAL." "Yeah, and she still dropped him like a bad habit." Marcus heard every word. Each comment was like a knife to his pride. He was supposed to be the hero of this story, the strong one, the untouchable warrior. Instead, he was on his knees in the dirt while everyone laughed at him. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself to his feet. His legs felt like jelly. His chest ached where she had hit him. He looked at Sarah, and for the first time in his life, Marcus Steele felt small. She extended her hand, a gesture of respect, of sportsmanship, but Marcus saw it as pity, and that was worse than the strike itself. He ignored her hand, pushed past her, walked toward the edge of the training field with as much dignity as he could manage, which was not much. His walk was more of a stumble, his shoulders hunched, his head down. The crowd parted for him. Nobody spoke as he passed. They just stared, some with shock, some with amusement, a few with something that looked like respect, not for him, for her. Sarah watched him go. She felt no satisfaction, no pride, just a deep tiredness that came from having to prove herself again and again. This was not her first rodeo. It would not be her last. Men like Marcus existed in every unit, every base, every corner of the military. She turned back to the formation, all those eyes on her, waiting to see what she would do next, waiting to see if she would gloat, make a speech, rub it in. She did none of those things. That demonstration shows the first principle of combat, she said, her voice carrying across the field. Size and strength mean nothing if you cannot control your emotions. The sergeant was angry. He was showing off. He was not thinking, and that made him vulnerable. She paused, let that sink in. In a real fight, you will face people bigger than you, stronger than you, better trained than you. Your only advantage is up here. She tapped her temple, your mind. Stay calm, stay focused. Find the opening. That is how you survive. The soldiers listened, really listened. This was not just talk. They had just watched her put theory into practice, had watched her dismantle a Navy SEAL with one strike. If that did not prove she knew what she was talking about, nothing would. Now pair up, Sarah continued. We are going to practice pressure point strikes. I will come around and correct your form. And please learn from the sergeant's mistake. Do not let your ego write checks your body cannot cash. A few soldiers chuckled at that. The tension broke. People started moving, finding partners, getting into position. The training continued like nothing had happened, but everyone knew something had changed. Meanwhile, Marcus had made it to the barracks. He stumbled into the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. His reflection stared back, hair messed up, face still red, eyes full of shame and anger. He splashed cold water on his face. It did not help. Nothing could wash away what had just happened. He was supposed to be untouchable, unbeatable, the best of the best, and a woman barely 5 feet tall had put him on his knees in front of over 1,000 people. His phone buzzed, then again and again. Messages were flooding in. He pulled it out with shaking hands. His heart sank as he scrolled through them. Bro, you okay? Just saw the video. Holy crap. Dude, it is all over Facebook already. Marcus felt sick. Video. Of course there was video, dozens of videos from every angle. His humiliation was now permanent, digital, shareable. It would follow him for the rest of his career, maybe his life. He opened social media. There it was. The video already had thousands of views. The comments section was brutal. Remember, I am a Navy SEAL. One comment read, followed by laughing emojis. She dropped him faster than my grades in math class. Respect to that woman. She did not even break a sweat. Marcus threw his phone against the wall. It hit with a crack and fell to the floor. The screen shattered, just like his pride. He slid down the wall and sat on the cold tile floor. His chest still hurt from that strike, but it was nothing compared to the pain of his wounded ego. He had spent his entire life building a reputation. Tough, fearless, unstoppable. One strike had torn it all down. What would his teammates say? His commanding officers, his family? Everyone would see that video. Everyone would know that the great Marcus Steele got dropped by someone he had called sweetheart. Outside, the sun continued to shine. Birds chirped. Life went on. But for Marcus, everything had changed. The morning that started with him feeling invincible had turned into his worst nightmare. And the worst part, he had no one to blame but himself. 3 days passed, 3 long, miserable days. Marcus barely left his room. He called in sick for training. Told his commanding officer he had food poisoning. It was not entirely a lie. The shame made him feel physically ill. The video had gone viral, not just on the base, everywhere. Military forums, Twitter, YouTube, Reddit. Even mainstream news sites had picked it up. Navy SEAL humbled by female instructor. Woman drops elite warrior with one strike. The headlines were endless and each one felt like another punch to the gut. His phone kept ringing. Friends from other units, old teammates, even his mother called. He ignored them all. He could not face them, could not hear the pity in their voices or worse, the amusement they were trying to hide. On the fourth day, someone knocked on his door. Marcus groaned. "Go away," he called out. The knocking continued, harder this time, more insistent. Marcus dragged himself off his bed and opened the door just a crack. He expected to see one of his buddies coming to make fun of him. Instead, he saw Sarah. She stood in the hallway in her regular uniform, hair still in that tight ponytail, face still calm, looking at him with those eyes that seemed to see right through him. "What do you want?" Marcus asked. His voice came out harsher than he intended. "To talk," Sarah said simply. "I have nothing to say to you." "Then just listen." She did not wait for permission. She pushed past him into the room. Marcus was too surprised to stop her. She looked around. The room was a mess. Empty food containers, dirty clothes on the floor, curtains drawn. It smelled stale, like defeat. "Nice place," she said without sarcasm. Marcus crossed his arms. "Say what you came to say and leave." Sarah sat down on his desk chair. She looked tired, not physically, but tired in a way that came from carrying too much weight for too long. "I know you are angry," she began, "at me, at yourself, at the whole situation, but hiding in here will not fix anything." "You do not know anything about me," Marcus shot back. "I know more than you think." Sarah leaned forward. "I know what it feels like to be humiliated in front of everyone, to have people doubt you, to feel like you have to prove yourself every single day just to be taken seriously." Marcus laughed bitterly. You just became a hero. Everyone loves you now. You are the woman who dropped a Navy SEAL. You are famous." "Famous?" Sarah repeated softly. "Is that what you think I wanted? Do you know how many times I have had to do exactly what I did to you? How many men have challenged me over the years? How many times I have had to prove I belong?" She stood up and walked to the window, pulled back the curtain. Sunlight flooded the room. Marcus squinted against it. "When I first joined the military," Sarah continued, "I was 22 years old, fresh out of training, eager to serve my country. You know what my first commanding officer said to me? He said I should consider being a secretary. That combat was not for girls, that I would get someone killed." Marcus said nothing, he just listened. "I worked twice as hard as everyone else, trained longer, studied more, took every certification I could get. And still there were always men like you, men who looked at me and saw only my size, my gender, never my skill, never my dedication." She turned back to face him. Her eyes were not angry, they were sad. "So yes, I dropped you in front of 1,040 people, and I am sorry it had to happen that way, but you gave me no choice. You made it clear you did not respect me, that you thought I was a joke. What was I supposed to do? Let you humiliate me instead?" Marcus felt something shift inside him, a crack in the wall he had built around his pride. He sat down on his bed. "I should not have called you sweetheart," he said quietly. "That was wrong." "No, you should not have." Sarah sat back down. "But I forgive you. The question is, can you forgive yourself?" How Marcus ran his hands through his hair. "Everyone saw, everyone knows. My reputation is destroyed." "Your reputation is not destroyed. It is just different now. You are no longer the untouchable warrior. You are human, flawed, capable of making mistakes, and that might actually make you better at your job." "How do you figure that?" "Because now you know what it feels like to lose, to be vulnerable. That will make you more careful, more thoughtful, less likely to underestimate an opponent. Humility is not weakness, Marcus. It is wisdom." Marcus looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. He saw the scars on her knuckles, the slight crook in her nose from where it had been broken, The way she held herself with quiet confidence that came from years of having to fight for every inch of respect. "How many times have you been knocked down?" he asked. Sarah smiled, a real smile, the first he had seen from her. "More times than I can count, but I always got back up. That is the real measure of a warrior, not whether you fall, but whether you get back up." She stood to leave, walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. "I have a class tomorrow at 0600, pressure point defense techniques. You should come. Learn how I did what I did. Turn your embarrassment into education." Marcus looked at the floor. "I do not know if I can face everyone yet." "You can and you will, because you are a Navy SEAL, and SEALs do not hide. They adapt. They overcome. So stop feeling sorry for yourself and show everyone what you are really made of." She opened the door. "Oh, and Marcus, clean your room. You are living like an animal in here." Then she was gone. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Marcus sat there in the sudden silence. The sunlight streaming through the window felt warm on his face. For the first time in days, he did not feel like hiding. He looked around at the mess of his room, at the life he had been wallowing in. Sarah was right. This was not him. This was not what he stood for. He was better than this. He had survived worse than embarrassment. He had faced actual death and come out the other side. One video did not define him. One mistake did not erase everything he had accomplished. But what he did next would show everyone who he really was. Would he stay down, or would he get back up? Marcus stood up, started picking up the trash, opening the windows, letting fresh air flow through the room. With each small action, he felt a little bit of his strength returning, not the fake strength of arrogance, the real strength of someone who had learned something valuable. Tomorrow at 0600, he would walk onto that training field. Everyone would stare. Some would whisper. Others would laugh. But he would hold his head high. He would learn from the woman who had taught him the hardest lesson of his life. And maybe, just maybe, he would come out of this a better man. The alarm went off at 5:30 in the morning. Marcus did not hit snooze. He got up immediately, showered, shaved, put on his cleanest uniform, looked at himself in the mirror. The man staring back at him looked different, older maybe, or just wiser. The walk to the training field felt like walking to his own execution. His heart pounded, his palms sweated. Every soldier he passed stopped and stared. Some tried to hide their smiles, others did not bother. "Hey, Steele," one guy called out. "Remind me, what were you again?" His friends burst out laughing. Marcus kept walking, did not respond, did not let them see that their words stung. He had learned something important over the past few days. Reacting to mockery only gave it power. Silence was stronger. The training field came into view. A crowd had already gathered. Word had spread that Marcus might show up to Sarah's class. People wanted to see what would happen. Would he challenge her again? Would he make a scene? Would he even have the guts to show his face? Marcus walked onto the field. The talking stopped. Everyone turned to look at him. The silence was deafening. He felt like he was walking in slow motion. Every step took forever, but he did not stop, did not turn around, did not run. Sarah stood at the front of the formation. She saw him coming. Their eyes met across the field. She gave him a small nod, not pity, not triumph, just acknowledgement. He nodded back. "Good morning, Sergeant Steele," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Good morning, Lieutenant Chen," he replied. His voice was steady, strong. "Find a spot in the formation. We are about to begin." Marcus joined the back row. Soldiers around him whispered, elbowed each other. One guy next to him leaned over. "You got some guts showing up here, man." "Either guts or stupidity," Marcus replied, still figuring out which. The guy laughed, actually laughed, not at him, with him. It felt good. Like maybe not everyone thought he was a complete joke. "All right, listen up," Sarah called out. "Today we are covering pressure point strikes. These techniques can disable an opponent regardless of size difference. You do not need to be strong. You need to be precise. You need to know where to hit and how hard. She walked along the front row. Her movements were smooth, controlled, like a dancer who knew every step by heart. The human body has several vulnerable points: the solar plexus, the throat, behind the ear, the temple, liver, kidneys, groin. When struck correctly, these points can cause intense pain, temporary paralysis, loss of consciousness, even death. She paused, let that information sink in. That is why we train, not to hurt each other, but to understand these techniques, to know what we are capable of, and more importantly, to recognize when someone is trying to use them against us. She stopped walking and turned to face the formation. I need a volunteer for a demonstration. Nobody moved. Nobody raised their hand. The memory of what happened to Marcus was still fresh. Nobody wanted to be the next viral video. Marcus took a deep breath. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was it, the moment of truth. He could stay in the back, stay safe, let someone else volunteer, or he could step up, show everyone that he was not afraid. He raised his hand. The crowd gasped. Phones came out again. This was going to be good. Everyone expected round 2, expected Marcus to try to redeem himself, expected another confrontation. Sarah looked at him. Their eyes met again. She studied his face, looking for anger, for pride, for that same arrogance that had gotten him dropped 4 days ago. She found none of it. Instead, she saw determination, humility, courage of a different kind, the kind that came from being willing to look foolish in order to learn. "Sergeant Steele," she said, "come forward." Marcus walked to the front. The crowd was silent, waiting, watching, recording. He stood in front of Sarah. She was even smaller than he remembered. How had someone so small put him on his knees? He was about to find out. "The sergeant and I have already met," Sarah said to the crowd. Some nervous laughter rippled through the formation. "But today, we are not opponents. We are teacher and student. He has volunteered to help me demonstrate these techniques. That takes courage." Marcus felt his chest loosen slightly. She was not going to humiliate him. She was going to teach. "Turn around," she instructed. "Face the crowd." He did. Seeing all those faces staring at him was harder than he expected. But he stood tall, shoulders back, head up. "The solar plexus," Sarah began, "is located here." She placed her palm flat against Marcus's chest, right above the stomach, below the ribcage. It is a dense network of nerves. When struck with the right amount of force at the right angle, it temporarily disrupts the diaphragm. She demonstrated in slow motion, showed the crowd exactly how she positioned her hand, the angle of her strike, the way she used her whole body to generate force, not just her arm. "Size does not matter with this technique," she continued. "What matters is accuracy and timing. I am 5'5". The sergeant is over 6 feet tall and outweighs me by at least 80 pounds. But I can still execute this strike effectively because I understand the mechanics." Marcus listened, really listened. He was learning more in these few minutes than he had in years of training, not just about fighting, about humility, about respect, about being willing to admit you do not know everything. Sarah moved on to other pressure points. The throat, the temple, behind the knee. She used Marcus as her demonstration dummy for each one. Never actually striking him, just showing the position, the angle, the technique. The crowd was engrossed. This was not entertainment anymore. This was education. Even the soldiers who came to watch Marcus get humiliated again were taking notes, paying attention, learning. After 30 minutes, Sarah stepped back. "Thank you, Sergeant. You can return to formation." Marcus started to walk away, then stopped, turned back to face her. The entire base held its breath. What was he going to do? He extended his hand, the same gesture she had offered him 4 days ago, the gesture he had ignored. "Thank you, Lieutenant," he said clearly, "for the lesson." Sarah smiled, took his hand, shook it firmly. "You are welcome, Sergeant." Someone in the crowd started clapping, then another person, then another. Within seconds, the entire formation was applauding, not for a fight, not for drama, but for respect, for growth, for a man who had the courage to admit he was wrong and learn from it. Marcus returned to his spot in formation. The guy next to him slapped him on the shoulder. "That was big of you, man." Marcus shrugged, still learning how to be big. The rest of the class went smoothly. Soldiers paired up, practiced the techniques. Sarah walked around correcting form, answering questions, being the excellent instructor she had always been. Marcus worked harder than anyone. He practiced each strike over and over, asked questions, took feedback. For the first time in a long time, he was not trying to be the best. He was just trying to be better. When the class ended, soldiers dispersed, heading to breakfast, to other training sessions, to their duties, but something had shifted. The story of the Navy SEAL and the instructor was no longer just about someone getting knocked down. It was becoming a story about someone getting back up. 6 months passed. The base had moved on to other stories, other dramas, other viral moments, but the lesson from that morning on the training field remained. It lived in the way soldiers talked to each other, the way they treated their instructors, the way they approached combat training. Marcus became a regular in Sarah's classes. He learned pressure points, joint locks, balance disruption techniques, things he had dismissed as useless tricks before. Now he understood they were science, art, skills that could save his life or the lives of his teammates. More importantly, he became an advocate. When new recruits joined the base, Marcus made sure they knew about Sarah's classes. He told them his story, not the sanitized version, not the version that made him look good. The real story, the one where his pride got him knocked down in front of 1,040 people. "Best thing that ever happened to me," he would say, "taught me that strength is not about muscles or medals. It is about being willing to learn, being willing to admit when you are wrong, being willing to change." The video was still out there, still circulating, still getting views and comments, but the narrative had changed. It was no longer just Navy SEAL gets dropped by woman. Now there were follow-up videos, Marcus volunteering, Marcus learning, Marcus shaking Sarah's hand while 1,040 people applauded. The comments changed too, less mocking, more respect. People started seeing it for what it really was, not a humiliation, a transformation. One afternoon, Marcus was called to the commanding officer's office. His stomach dropped. He wondered if he was in trouble, if the video had finally caught up with him in some official way. He knocked on the door, entered when told, stood at attention in front of the desk. The commanding officer, Colonel Davies, looked up from his paperwork. "At ease, Sergeant." The colonel gestured to a chair. "Sit." Marcus sat. His mind raced through possibilities. "None of them good. I have been watching you," the colonel said, "over the past 6 months. The way you have handled yourself after that incident with Lieutenant Chen." Marcus braced himself. "Here it comes. I'm impressed," Colonel Davies continued. Many soldiers would have let their ego destroy them, would have blamed the instructor, blamed the situation, blamed everyone but themselves. You did the opposite. You owned it, learned from it, grew from it. Marcus blinked. This was not what he expected. "Sir, I just did what I thought was right, exactly." The colonel leaned back in his chair. "Do you know why we train so hard, why we push our soldiers to their limits? To prepare us for combat, sir, partly. But more than that, we train to break people down so we can build them back up, to strip away the ego and reveal the character underneath. Some people break and never recover. Others discover what they are really made of. You are the second kind." The colonel pulled out a folder. Inside was a form, official looking. "Important. I am recommending you for a position as an instructor, combat training. You would work alongside Lieutenant Chen, teaching new recruits the same lessons you learned. Size is not strength. Humility is not weakness. Are you interested?" Marcus felt his throat tight. 6 months ago, this would have felt like a demotion, a punishment, being sent to teach instead of being out in the field. Now it felt like an honor. "Yes, sir." "I'm very interested." "Good." The colonel signed the form. "You start next month." Dismissed. Marcus stood, saluted, turned to leave. At the door he paused. "Sir, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Did you know about Lieutenant Chen's skills when you brought her to the base?" Colonel Davies smiled, a knowing smile. "Of course I knew. I have known Sarah Chen for 10 years. Watched her drop men twice her size more times than I can count. Why do you think I assigned her to teach here, to teach us combat techniques? To teach you humility. The colonel's smile widened. Every base has soldiers like you used to be, steel, cocky, overconfident, thinking their size and strength make them invincible. Those soldiers are dangerous, not to the enemy, to themselves and their teammates. I brought Lieutenant Chen here to fix that problem, and she did. One strike at a time. Marcus felt his face flush. He had been played, set up. The colonel had known exactly what would happen when an arrogant Navy SEAL challenged a skilled instructor half his size. But instead of anger, he felt gratitude, because the colonel was right. He had been dangerous, not just to himself, to everyone who relied on him. His overconfidence could have gotten people killed in a real combat situation. Thank you, sir. Do not thank me. Thank Lieutenant Chen. She is the one who took the heat, became the bad guy, let herself be recorded and mocked online. All to teach soldiers like you a lesson that could save your life someday. Marcus left the office in a daze. He walked across the base toward the training fields. The afternoon sun was warm on his face. Soldiers passed by. Some nodded at him, others called out greetings. He was no longer the guy from the video. He was just Marcus, flawed, human, real. He found Sarah running drills with a group of new recruits. She saw him approaching and called for a water break. The recruits scattered, leaving them alone. I just came from Colonel Davies' office, Marcus said. Oh, Sarah took a drink from her water bottle, waited. He told me everything about why you were brought here, about the setup, about how you knew exactly what was going to happen that day. Sarah nodded slowly. Are you angry? I should be. Marcus shook his head, but I am not, because it worked. I needed that wake-up call, needed someone to knock me down a few pegs, literally. Sarah smiled. For what it is worth, I did not enjoy it. Humiliating people is not why I do this job. Then why do you do it? She looked out at the training field, at the recruits taking their water break, at the base stretching out in all directions. Because every soldier I humble in training is a soldier who stays alive in combat. Pride kills, Marcus. It makes you reckless, makes you think you are bulletproof. I would rather bruise your ego here than have you come home in a box because you thought you were too tough to be careful. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a weight he had been carrying for 6 months, maybe longer, the weight of trying to be perfect, untouchable, larger than life. It lifted. I am going to be an instructor, he said, starting next month, working with you. Sarah's eyes widened. Really? That is great news. We need more instructors who understand what it is like to learn the hard way. I am going to tell my story to every new recruit. Show them the video, let them laugh. Then teach them why it mattered, why getting knocked down was the best thing that ever happened to me. That takes courage. I learned from the best. Marcus extended his hand. Partners. Sarah took his hand, shook it firmly. Partners. The recruits started drifting back. Water break was over, time to get back to work. Sarah called them into formation. Marcus stayed to watch. This was his future now, not fighting enemies on distant shores, fighting egos on training fields, teaching the next generation of warriors that strength without wisdom was just weakness in disguise. As he walked away, he pulled out his phone. The video was still there, still getting views, still being shared. He watched it one more time, saw himself standing there with all that arrogance, saw Sarah's calm face, saw the strike, saw himself drop. He used to hate that video. Now he saw it differently. It was not a record of his failure. It was proof of his growth. The man in that video no longer existed. That cocky, overconfident fool had died on that training field 6 months ago. What rose in his place was better, humbler, wiser, more dangerous in the ways that actually mattered. Not because of size or strength or training, but because of understanding. Understanding that real power came from knowing your limitations, from respecting your opponent, from never ever letting your ego write checks your body could not cash. That night Marcus sat in his room, clean now, organized, windows open to let in fresh air. He opened his laptop and started typing. Not a post, not an explanation, just thoughts. Reflections on the journey from that morning 6 months ago to this moment. He wrote about pride and how it blinds you, about respect and how you earn it, about strength and how it comes in forms you do not expect, about teachers who care enough to knock you down so you learn to get back up. When he finished, he saved the document. Someday he would share it with recruits, with soldiers, with anyone who needed to hear that being broken down was sometimes the first step to being built back better. The story of the Navy SEAL and the instructor would live on social media, in base legends, in the minds of everyone who witnessed it. But the real story was not the one captured on video. It was the one that happened after, the quiet transformation, the daily choice to be better, the courage to face your mistakes and learn from them. Remember, I am a Navy SEAL. Those words had been a warning, a threat, a declaration of superiority. Now they meant something different. They meant accountability, meant holding yourself to a higher standard, meant being the kind of warrior who was strong enough to admit weakness, skilled enough to keep learning, humble enough to know you will never know it all. Marcus closed his laptop. Tomorrow he would start preparing for his new role, reading teaching materials, practicing demonstrations, planning lessons. But tonight he just sat in the quiet of his room and felt grateful. Grateful for Sarah Chen and her patience. Grateful for Colonel Davies and his wisdom. Grateful for 1,040 witnesses who saw him at his lowest and then watched him rise. Grateful for a single strike that changed everything. Outside, the base settled into evening routines. Soldiers heading to chow, to their bunks, to wherever they needed to be. Life continued. The world turned. And somewhere on that base, someone else was learning a lesson they needed to learn, getting knocked down so they could discover what they were really made of. That was the real legacy of that day on the training field. Not the viral video, not the headlines, not the embarrassment, but the understanding that sometimes the worst moment of your life is actually the beginning of the best version of yourself. All you have to do is get back up.